Cloak and crimson. The masked revelers parted as Selene Vale stepped onto the marble terrace overlooking the grand ballroom. Candle-lit chandeliers floated like captured constellations, their warm glow spilling over velvet banners and gilded columns, turning every face into an alluring mystery. Invisible musicians coaxed crescendos from violins above the hum of gossip and the clink of crystal goblets. It was a spectacle meant to dazzle, and for a heartbeat, Selene let herself be dazzled. Then her training steadied her pulse. She adjusted the silver half-mask that concealed her cheekbones and the faint scar at her jaw, schooling her expression into bored, aristocratic grace. The persona she had chosen tonight, Lady Seraphine Lysandor, was a phantom stitched from forged records, hushed rumors, and one carefully planted invitation. No one here knew that beneath the gauzy emerald silk of her gown hid vials of poison, a wire-thin blade, and the weight of a mission whispered by anxious human governors who feared the dark court glittering around her. At the top of a sweeping staircase, the herald announced, "His Highness, Prince Kael Therion." A hush rippled outward like a stone dropped into still water. Every vampire in the ballroom turned as one. The humans, very few and carefully selected, followed nervously, like prey pretending otherwise. Kael descended with unhurried confidence, a black mask framing eyes the color of storm glass. He wore midnight silk embroidered with threads so dark they seemed to eat the light. Power radiated from him, tangible as heat. Around Selene, ladies pressed gloved fingers to throats and ancient lords offered measured bows. He acknowledged none of it until he reached the polished floor and spoke with quiet command. "Enjoy the night," he said, voice clear but soft, almost intimate. "For dawn is always uncertain." The words were innocuous, yet the crowd reacted as if he'd offered prophecy. Selene's handler had warned her about that voice, velvet hiding steel. She watched him with the same smile she'd practiced in mirrors, letting her gaze linger just long enough to suggest interest without presumption. Then she moved, gliding through knots of nobles whose conversations tasted of blood politics and longing. Her objective was simple: draw Kael's interest, earn a private audience, administer the poison meant to mimic the wasting sickness that sometimes claimed elder vampires. In 7 nights, he would weaken. In 14, he would die. The human council could then negotiate succession with the more pliable members of his family. At least that was their hope. Whether the plan acknowledged the ruthlessness of vampire succession was another matter, but Selene's role ended once the poison settled in his veins. She drifted to the refreshment table lined with crystal flutes of crimson. The scent was copper and something floral, an alchemist's homage to vintage wine. She lifted one but did not drink. Under the mask, she scanned reflections in the glassware. The prince was making deliberate progress toward her, declining dances, exchanging only the briefest courtesies. Each refusal turned more eyes her way, as though the gathering air itself suggested collision. A low male voice brushed her ear. "I rarely see someone taste the bouquet and yet resist drinking." Selene feigned mild surprise and faced him. Up close, Kael was impossibly still, as though time itself hesitated. His mask revealed a strong mouth and a faint line between brows that could be curiosity, could be suspicion. "I find savoring anticipation keeps a lady disciplined," she replied, letting playfulness shimmer at the edges of her words. "And safe." A subtle tilt of his head. Safe. An interesting goal for one who enters a predator's den. "You speak as though the ballroom is dangerous. Only to those unprepared." His eyes flicked to the untouched glass in her hand. "Tell me, do you fear intoxication, or merely prefer your blood unseasoned?" In place of laughter, she offered a conspiratorial murmur. "I prefer clarity. It is the one currency courts cannot counterfeit." The prince's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Clarity is expensive. What does Lady Lysandor spend to acquire it?" "Observation." She met his gaze without flinching, fighting the instinct to glance away from the depth she found there. "And silence." He extended his hand. "Dance with me. We will observe together, and perhaps remain silent if we must. Every protocol demanded she accept. She set aside the glass, placed gloved fingers in his, and let him lead her onto the luminous floor. The orchestra shifted to a waltz, strings weaving yearning with menace. As Kael guided her into motion, the room blurred, each slow revolution binding them closer until fabric whispered against fabric. Selene's heartbeat controlled but present, enough for any vampire near to hear. Kael's voice dropped. Your pulse is steady. Either you are fearless or well-trained. Perhaps I'm thrilled. She allowed a soft breath to brush his throat, as though drawn to a scent only she could taste. He inhaled. Testing her, she realized. Vampires could read far more from a person's fragrance than simple perfume. She kept her fear tucked under layers of discipline, offered him only the faint spice of adrenaline, not panic. You carry secrets, he said, and doesn't everyone in this hall? Fewer than you think. His hand tightened at her waist, the pressure neither painful nor polite, an anchor. Most revelers here have already betrayed their secrets long ago through politics and allegiance. You, however, have not had time to betray anything at all. I am newly arrived, she said lightly. That makes me fascinating. Dangerous, actually. Her lips parted as though in astonishment, but inside she catalogued exits, timing, and the subtle sway of his grip. She needed his trust, not his suspicion. Yet he saw through masks. She would pivot. If I am dangerous, Your Highness, then our dance is risk for you. He guided her into a slow spin. Tonight I find myself curious. Curiosity can be lethal. So can boredom. Something flickered behind his mask, humor tinted with older sorrow. She sensed it, an ache pressed beneath centuries of restraint. It made him unexpectedly human, and it stirred an echo in her own chest, so unplanned she bristled. The waltz ended on a vibrant chord. Applause scattered among the watching crowd, though Selene heard whispers blooming already, speculation about the unknown lady who held the prince's attention. Kael bowed, never breaking eye contact. Walk with me, he said. Your court will notice. They already have, he offered his arm. Let them wonder why. She slipped her hand onto his sleeve, silk over muscle, cool, but alive. Together they moved through parted guests, down a corridor lined with glass sculptures, frozen wings, coiled serpents, roses caught mid-bloom. In the quiet, their footsteps echoed softly. Kael paused before an open arch leading to the palace gardens, where lanterns floated among night-blooming lilies. Moonlight silvered the paths, painting shadows deep enough to hide confessions. He gestured for her to precede him, a gesture of courtesy so old it felt like invocation. Do you trust me to follow? She asked, testing. He answered without hesitation. The question is whether you trust yourself to lead. Selene stepped onto the dew-dusted stone, heart ticking faster. She forced herself to remember the dagger strapped to her thigh, the poison vial resting like ice against her ribs. Yet every warning her mentors had drilled into her, that Prince Kael was a monster clad in civility, felt inadequate against the figure beside her, thoughtfully guiding her toward a willow sheltering a marble bench. He motioned for her to sit. She did not. Standing allowed her space to react quickly. Instead, she tilted her face toward the sky as though admiring constellations invisible through the city's enchanted barrier. I was told the palace gardens hold rare white nightshade, she said, an acquired appreciation. He strolled to a flowering vine, brushing petals with the backs of his fingers. Poisonous to mortals, mildly stimulating to us. And to those caught between? She asked. It was innocent curiosity, but Kael's gaze sharpened. You believe such people exist? He prompted. Stories persist? Stories. He paced nearer. In stories, motives are simple. Reality is rarely so generous. She found herself smiling. You speak as though you've spent centuries disillusioned. I have spent them awake. His voice softened. And you, Lady Lysandor? What keeps you awake? Purpose. She let her eyes linger on his lips, an intimate confession disguised as flirtation. And nightmares. He studied her as though measuring the distance between lies and truth. Nightmares can be powerful teachers. Tell me one. Selene inhaled, ready to fabricate something suitably tragic, but the moon cast his face in gentle light, and the lie tangled on her tongue. An unbidden memory rose, her childhood home burning, screams drowning beneath howls. She suppressed it, forging a safer tale. "I dream of drowning in velvet," she said quietly, surprised by the note of real fear in her voice. "A ballroom filling with blood until chandeliers are extinguished." "Velvet can suffocate," Kael acknowledged, "but drowning in blood, that is a nightmare we share." Unexpected kinship flickered between them. Selene lowered her gaze, unsettled by sincerity. She needed to pivot again, reclaim distance. She brushed imagined lint from her glove. "I have occupied too much of your evening, Your Highness." "On the contrary, you have provided the first genuine conversation I've had in weeks." He took a measured step closer, close enough that moonlit breath mingled. "I would repay the favor with something genuine in turn." Her pulse leapt. "I'm listening." "Trust." He lifted her hand to his lips but did not kiss it, only breathed against the satin like a promise. "Yet trust won't bloom in public view. Walk with me a little farther into the gardens, where the walls have fewer ears." Each word pressed against her guise, urging it to crack. She nudged panic aside and nodded. "Very well." He led her along a narrow path where lanterns dwindled and the perfume of jasmine grew heady. Selene's senses sharpened. Branch patterns overhead, gravel beneath slippers, faint rustle of servants beyond hedges. She slipped her hand from his arm, pretending to trace a sculpture's elegant curve, and palmed the metal syringe hidden in her sleeve. A single prick during a slow caress, and the toxin would begin its silent work. "Do you enjoy danger?" he asked behind her, almost conversational. "I enjoy truth." She pivoted toward him, syringe hidden in her cuffed palm. "Danger is merely the cost." "Then let us be truthful." Kael closed the space between them. "You are not Lady Seraphine Lysandor." Selene's breath caught. The words hung like a blade suspended over glass. Her heartbeat throbbed against the plunger beneath her fingertips. She considered lunging, jabbing, fleeing into the dark. Instead, she tilted her head, feigning mystified amusement. "And who, pray, am I?" "I haven't decided." He brushed an escaped lock of her hair back, fingertips colder than night, but gentle. "But I will." Their gazes locked. Challenge collided with desire, suspicion with something older and rawer. Selene felt herself leaning infinitesimally closer, as though gravity favored his orbit. She saw reflection in his eyes, not prey, but equal. Behind them, brittle twigs snapped. Kael's head turned sharply, nostrils flaring. In the same motion, he guided Selene behind him, one arm a sudden barrier of iron wrapped in silk. "Stay close," he murmured. From the shadows stepped a hooded figure cloaked in charcoal. The assassin's daggers glinted like fangs. Selene recognized the symbol etched on the hilts, a rival vampire house infamous for cultivating fanatics. Her pulse spiked. This was not part of her mission. Kael's voice emerged low and lethal. "You choose poor timing." The assassin replied in a rasping purr, only seizing a moment of weakness. Selene felt Kael's muscles coil. She should retreat, let them fight. But her training roared. Every mission demanded adaptation. A dead prince before she delivered the toxin would mire the court in chaos she could not predict. And something inside her balked at watching him fall. She stepped forward just enough that the assassin's gaze flickered over her. She smiled like broken glass. The distraction lasted a heartbeat, long enough for Kael to lunge. Steel rang against steel, the clash bright and violent in the still garden. Selene's hand found the hilt of her slender blade beneath her gown. The assassin twisted away from Kael, slashing toward her instead, choosing the apparent weak link. Selene parried, surprise flashing in the zealot's yellow eyes. Her riposte traced a shallow line across the attacker's forearm. Not lethal, but enough to redirect. Kael struck, disarming the assassin with brutal efficiency. A second later, he pinned the zealot against a column of ivy, fangs descending as a low growl curled from his chest. "Name your house," Kael demanded. "House Mortivar sends its regards," the assassin spat, blood on teeth. Kael's anger vibrated through Selene even without touch. But something else glowered there. Betrayal layered on betrayal. He slammed the attacker's head against stone, enough to daze but not kill. "Go," he ordered. "Tell your master the throne remembers every insult, and pray I forget this one." He released the zealot. The assassin staggered, vanished into darkness. Kael exhaled slowly, then turned to Selene. Lantern light illuminated a smear of crimson on his sleeve from the clash, a drop of blood on his lip. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. Selene lowered her blade, realizing her hands shook. "Someone who dislikes bullies." "That is not an answer. It's the only answer available tonight." She tucked the blade back into its sheath, aware she was revealing a skill a debutante should not possess. Kael crossed the distance, eyes searing. "You fought as though trained since childhood. Nobles do not risk broken nails, let alone blood." "I've never believed in hiding behind others," she swallowed. "Nor, it seems, do you." He wiped the drop of blood from his lip, studying the crimson against his pale fingertip. Then he reached, gently taking her wrist where faint tremors betrayed adrenaline. His thumb brushed her pulse. "You saved me," he said, wonder threading through suspicion. "Don't make more of it than it is." "What is it, then?" She tried to speak, but the garden seemed to contract, time shrinking until only the beating of their hearts remained. Her mission, her carefully chilled resolve, all of it felt fragile under the gravity of his question. Kael released her wrist and stepped back. "Return to the ballroom. Celebrate. In an hour, a carriage will carry you safely to your apartments." "You dismiss me?" "I protect you." His voice turned paper thin. "The court will smell lies on you. Mortivar's zealots may come again. While I decide what to do with your secrets, be somewhere I can find you." He turned away, but Selene grasped his hand. The contact jolted them both. "Prince Kael," she whispered. "If you believe I am a threat, why let me go?" His fingers tightened, holding her in the question. Moonlight traced sharpness along his cheekbones and the vulnerable curve of his mouth. "Because I don't know whether you're my enemy," he answered, "or my only ally." He withdrew, leaving her with garden shadows and jasmine wind. Selene stood alone, listening to the echo of his words and the pounding of her own heart, unsure which hurt more, the mission slipping through her fingers, or the idea that she might not want it anymore. Wordless, she lifted her mask to wipe moisture from her lip, only to discover a single tear instead of blood. She laughed at herself, a sound too soft to carry, then straightened and walked back toward the ballroom lights, already bracing for dawn she could no longer predict. When Selene re-entered the ballroom, the chandeliers had settled into a softer glow, as though the glittering court wished to lull itself toward dawn. A few dancers still drifted across the polished floor, their smiles fixed, their gossip hungry for fresh scandal. She kept her composure, though her lungs still tasted of jasmine and danger. Somewhere beyond the grand doors, Kael would be issuing orders, scrubbing away any sign that House Mortivar had infiltrated his celebration. A footman materialized at her elbow. "My lady, your carriage awaits." "Tell the driver I require a moment," she said with airy dismissal. "I promised the Duchess of Raviella farewell." The lie flowed easily. The footman bowed and retreated. Selene moved instead toward the mirrored wall, where drapes of crimson silk parted to reveal a narrow service corridor. She slipped inside before anyone could question her, and hurried along the shadowed passage, heels silent on stone. Her apartments lay in the south wing, granted precarious privacy by virtue of her forged noble standing. She passed 2 guards wearing the livery of Kael's household, men who bowed as though she belonged. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and at last she allowed trembling fingers to unlace her gloves. She shed them, then unclasped her mask. The face staring back from a silver vanity mirror was flushed, eyes too bright. Victory was supposed to taste of cold calculation. Instead, her thoughts spun on Kael's parting words. "Because I don't know whether you're my enemy or my only ally." She sank onto a velvet stool and watched her reflection. The poison remained secure beside her ribs, the syringe unused. By every measure of mission success, she had failed the night. Worse, she knew exactly when she had chosen failure. The moment she stepped between Kael and the assassin's blade. A soft scrape sounded behind the wardrobe. Selene rose, sliding her hidden dagger loose. The panel shifted, revealing her handler, Elias Winters, squeezing through a concealed servant's passage. Elias was a slender man with parchment-pale skin, bleary from lack of sunlight. He favored sober attire that blended into shadow. "Report," he whispered, closing the panel. "I'm alive," she said dryly. "So is Prince Kael." Elias's eyes hardened. "Explain." She crossed to the hearth where embers glowed. "A zealot from Mortivar attacked. I intervened alongside Kael. Circumstances complicated the mission." "Complicated," he echoed. "Did you administer the toxin?" "No." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "Your orders were explicit. House Mortivar is moving against him. If Kael falls tonight, succession devolves into civil war. Chaos favors Mortivar, not the Council. The Council pays us to ensure human safety, not safeguard one vampire's crown." Elias caught her wrist, gaze sharp. "Are you compromised?" She yanked free. "I'm thinking, Elias, something our masters seem to lack talent for. Your emotions cloud judgment. Finish the task before dawn." He noted the slight tremor in her hand. Unless the prince noticed a tremor himself. Selene flashed a brittle smile. Kael noticed everything. She gestured toward the hidden passage. "Go. Before the palace wards shift and trap you. I will resolve this." Elias hesitated. "Remember who you answer to." "I haven't forgotten," she said. "My conscience simply has a louder voice." He disappeared without another word. Selene exhaled, then stripped her gown for a riding cloak and soft boots. The poison vial she transferred to a silk pouch, weighing it like a coin she no longer wished to spend. Moonlight streamed across the parquet as she cracked open the balcony doors, craving air. Far below, a courtyard lantern flickered. She recognized the slim figure who waited there, alone and unguarded. Kael. Selene hesitated only a breath before descending the servants' stairs, Cloak whispering over marble. The courtyard smelled of wet stone. Kael faced the fountain, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't turn when she approached. "You said you preferred clarity," he murmured. "I offer it now." She stopped at a respectful distance. You dismissed me." "I needed to think, away from watchful eyes." He pivoted, studying her attire. "Ready to flee?" "Ready to choose my own battleground." A ghost of approval touched his mouth. "Then hear me, Selene Vale." Her name on his tongue startled her. He continued. "I knew your alias was a fabrication long before tonight. My network intercepted a query for genealogical forgeries." He gestured to the palace walls. "I let you in because enemies expose themselves when they believe they have a blade at my throat." "And do you?" His gaze flicked to the pouch at her hip. "You carry something meant for me." He spoke without reproach, only fact. "Yet when Mortivar's dagger threatened, you defended me instead." "They threatened my mission," she lied, but the words withered in the night. "An efficient operative would use any distraction to strike. You hesitated." He stepped closer. "Why?" Selene wanted to vanish behind her cloak, but honesty pressed forward. "Because for a moment I believed you worth saving." The admission hovered between them, fragile as frost. Kael's shoulders eased and he offered his hand, palm up. Walk with me, no guards, no titles, just Kael and Selene. She placed her fingers upon his, cool contact that sparked warmth. They paced the colonnade in silence until Kael spoke again. For centuries I've seen humanity's fear weaponized against us. Mortivar feeds that fear. They sow rumors of uprisings, stage attacks, then demand retaliation that reinforces the myth. His voice tightened. I will not let them define our future, but I need allies who understand both worlds. Selene laughed softly. You presume I want the job. I know you want justice. He halted beneath an arch bearing ivy. Moonlight carved silver along his cheekbone. Tell me who sent you. Selene lowered her gaze. If I betray them, humans will suffer. Vampires will retaliate. The cycle continues. Then bargain with me. Kael hooked a finger beneath her chin, lifting until their eyes met. Name a price for your loyalty, and I will pay it. She swallowed. Trust is not for sale. Then allow me to earn it. He released her and stepped back, offering freedom. Stay until dawn. Watch what I do when threats gather. Decide whether I deserve your poison or your protection. A rustle sliced the quiet. Selene spun. An elegant figure dropped from the terrace roof. Sleek leather, twin sabers flashing. This assassin wore no mask. Pale hair cascaded over shoulders, and crimson sigils glowed across gauntlets. Prince Kael, she purred, bowing with theatrical grace. Lady Varys Mortivar bids you farewell. The named assassin at last. Selene's muscles coiled, but Kael edged forward. Varys, he greeted, cold contempt. Your house grows bold. Bold? We merely cull stagnant blood. Varys's gaze shifted to Selene. You bring mortals to royal gardens like pets. Selene assessed distance, footing, weapon. Kael's stance told her he intended to fight alone. She drew beside him anyway. Varys laughed, delighted. Ah, chivalry, how quaint. Without warning, she lunged. Steel clanged. Kael parried, but Varys moved like liquid mercury, striking low then high. Selene flanked, dagger slicing for exposed tendons. Varys twisted aside, slashing Selene's cloak open. Fabric fluttered free, revealing the silk pouch. Varys sneered. Gifts for your lover? Allow me to unwrap. Blade darting, she carved a shallow trail across Selene's ribs before Selene deflected. Pain flared hot and immediate. Kael roared, forcing Varys back with a flurry of strikes that rang like hammer on anvil. Selene's vision blurred, she pressed a palm to the wound. Felt warm blood. Panic threatened. The pouch clinked. Poison or salvation? Her fingers closed around the vial. If Kael fell, Mortivar would seize the throne. She broke the seal with her teeth, spitting the shard aside. Vapor hissed. Varys feinted left, then thrust for Kael's heart. Selene hurled the vial. Glass shattered against Varys's pauldron, releasing a cloud of iridescent mist. The assassin choked, stumbling. Kael seized the moment, driving his sword through her shoulder. Varys shrieked, dagger clattering. Yield, Kael ordered. Varys hissed, eyes blazing. Better to die than kneel. She wrenched free, vaulting atop the balustrade. Blood spattered marble as she vanished into darkness. Silence crashed down. Selene swayed. Kael caught her before she struck stone, lowering her to the courtyard bench. You're hurt, he muttered, tearing his cravat to staunch bleeding. She winced but managed a wry smile. And you are not poisoned. Congratulations. Kael glanced at the shimmering residue on the flagstones. That vial was meant for me? It incapacitates vampires, not humans. She hissed as he pressed cloth to her side. Side effect, paralyzes assassins. His expression was unreadable. You chose to save me. Again. Habit forming, apparently. She tried humor, though tears stung. and I doubt your tailor will forgive the blood." He ignored the jest, crimson eyes softening as he tied a knot. "You risked your handler's wrath. I risked my own peace of mind." She clutched his wrist. "Kael, if we do this, if I stay, war may come for both our peoples. Then let war find us together." He brushed hair from her face, gentler than the breeze. "Selene, I offer more than safety. I offer purpose. Help me dismantle Mortivar's network. In return, I will shield your kind from the vengeance my court would otherwise unleash." She searched his face for guile and found only weary sincerity. Dawn's first pale blush touched distant towers. Already the sky lightened, promising consequences. Footsteps approached. Captain Rhys, Kael's most loyal guard, halted at a respectful distance. "Your Highness, alarms report Mortivar skirmishes along the eastern ward." Kael's jaw tightened. "Ready the Shadow Guard, secure Lady Vale's chambers." Selene rose shakily. "I will not hide while you fight." Kael considered, then offered his hand again. "Stand with me, then." She placed her palm against his. Choice pulsed between them, thrumming, irrevocable. "I stand," she whispered. Captain Rhys saluted and led them toward the keep. Selene felt the weight of her betrayal lifting, replaced by heavier, but nobler armor. As they crossed the threshold into torch-lit corridors, Kael leaned close. "After this night," he said, voice for her alone, "I will owe you a truth for every secret you yield." Her heart fluttered. "Be careful, I have many secrets. And I possess centuries of truth." His smile was fleeting but real. "We will trade." They disappeared into the fortress just as the horizon blushed gold, leaving the quiet courtyard scattered with wilted jasmine and shards that still shimmered where poison had turned to harmless dust. The stone corridors heaved with motion. Courtiers in brocade nightclothes pressed against walls while armored guards sprinted past, buckles jangling. Torchlight flared with every gust of wind from the ramparts, blowing sparks through banners that snapped overhead. Selene kept pace beside Kael, her side throbbing under the makeshift bandage, but she refused to lag. Captain Rhys led them toward the war chamber, a circular hall encased in stained glass too thick for sunrise to pierce. Inside, a crimson-veined map table already glowed with enchanted embers, marking breaches along the eastern ward. Advisors hunched over it. Duke Garien, with his hawk profile, Lady Muriel, whose silver eyes missed nothing, and a nervous steward flicking quills across parchment. Garien barely inclined his head when Kael entered. House Mortivar's saboteurs cut the wardstones at 3 points. Patrols report swifter units moving for the inner courts. Lady Muriel threw Selene a glance as sharp as broken ice. "Your Highness, why bring an unvetted mortal into a council of war?" Kael rested his palms on the map. "Because our enemy has studied this fortress for a century, we need a perspective Mortivar lacks. Lady Vale will provide it." Murmurs crackled. Selene felt their scrutiny like nettles against skin, but she stepped forward, voice steady. "Mortivar relies on stealth and misdirection," she said. "Cutting wardstones is stage 1. Stage 2 is inciting chaos inside so defense is split between internal and external threats. They'll aim to sever corridors connecting the East Wing Armory and the medical halls. Once isolation is achieved, they'll push elite strike teams for the throne chamber." Kael met Garien's raised brow. "She is correct. I have read Mortivar's doctrines. They echo her assessment." Muriel crossed her arms. "Even if her insight is genuine, we've not the numbers to cover every corridor." Selene tapped the map's glowing glyphs. "Then funnel their strike teams here." She traced a path leading under a vaulted causeway. The narrow choke forces them into single file. Seal the rear with collapsing gates. Detach a contingent of crossbowmen above, armed with tungsten bolts mixed with wyvern venom tips. Mortivar warriors wear sigil-forged breastplates, but the venom seeps through chains' smallest seams. Captain Rhys spoke up. 40 crossbows on the mezzanine are ready, sire. I can dispatch runners to rig the gates." Kael gave a single nod. "Do it. Lady Vale will command from the mezzanine. Gasps rippled. Selene blinked. I'm not a commander. You're a strategist who saved my life twice tonight, Kael replied. Rhys, place a guard on her flank and one at her rear. If she says fire, you fire. Rhys saluted. At once. Selene's chest warmed with a flare of something perilously like pride. As the captain exited, Kael leaned closer, voice pitched for her alone. Trust earned, remember, let me prove I heed it. She answered with a faint incline of her head. Then followed Rhys, Cloak brushing marble. Down spiraling stairs they moved to a balcony corridor where arrow slits yawned open to pre-dawn darkness. The sky beyond was bruised violet. Clouds stripped silver at their edges. Bells tolled, 3 quick knells signaling perimeter contact. They reached the mezzanine, an overhanging platform that looked upon the choked causeway below. Crossbowmen lined its balustrade, grim-faced, stringing bolts tipped with glassy amber. Selene ignored the dizzying drop and surveyed the shadows where Mortivar would emerge. She felt the ache of her wound but pressed a handkerchief against it, focus sharpening to a blade's point. Gates ready? She called. Rhys inspected chains coiled above the entry arch. Weighted and rigged. Good. Selene exhaled, centering breath the way her instructors taught. Hold until you see white of fang. Mortivar will try glamour illusions. Watch for feet that cast no shadow. Soft footsteps pattered. A squire hurried in, delivering a leather satchel. Compliments of His Highness, he said. Inside lay dusk-black gauntlets laced with protective sigils, and a slender rapier forged of star steel, its grip sized perfectly for Selene's hand. She fitted the gauntlets, their magic humming against her skin, and belted the rapier at her waist. Torches guttered as cold wind swept the corridor. A rank stench drifted up, metal and moss. Figures spilled from the far archway below, hooded, armored, moving in lethal concert. Selene counted 18 before they slithered into the narrowed throat, heads low. She raised her left hand, crossbow strings tightened. The vanguard halted as though scenting a trap. Behind them, Varys Mortivar strode into view, arm still bandaged, but eyes luminous with zeal. She tipped her head back, inhaling. Fire, Selene commanded. Bolts peppered the walkway, venom shard tips shattering against plate, seeping through gaps. Mortivar warriors writhed, some collapsing, screeching curses. Varys twisted aside, cape flaring. She raised palms, conjuring a shockwave that blasted masonry, ripping torches from brackets. Stone dust filled the air. Selene shielded her face but held ground. Varys pointed upward. Bring me the traitor. Arrows hissed from below, clattering off the balustrade. Selene ducked, momentum tugging at her wound. Crossbowmen reloaded. On her nod, they loosed second volleys. More zealots dropped, but half-vaulted up buttresses. Claws sinking into cracks, scrambling toward the mezzanine. Rhys barked orders, blades flashing as the first climber vaulted over the rail. Selene drew the star steel rapier. Its balance felt like a secret revealed. A zealot lunged. She sidestepped, slashing an ankle tendon, flipping the foe into the abyss. Another seized her cloak. She pivoted and pierced his thigh. Then Rhys finished him. Chains rattled. Zealots below rallied, ramming the gate mechanism. Selene shouted, "Drop the gates!" Rhys hacked the release lever. Iron lattices slammed down at both ends of the choke, isolating Mortivar in a killing box. Trapped warriors howled. Crossbows sang a third time. The shrieks cut short. Everything stilled except Varys, crouched in the center of fallen allies, glaring upward. She leapt, an impossible bound, claws catching the balustrade. Selene met her with steel. Blades rang, sparks strobing. Varys's injured arm slowed her parries, but fury lent speed. She feinted high, then sliced low, catching Selene's boot. Selene stabbed, nicking Varys's cheek, drawing black ruby blood. The assassin hissed and spat a word of power. Shadows writhed from her sigils, serpents of living smoke. They coiled toward Selene's throat. A scarlet blur intervened, Kael vaulted over railings from an adjacent stair, intercepting the shadows with his bare hand. They burned against his skin, but he flung them aside, eyes blazing. "Enough," he growled. Varys laughed raggedly. "Prince, your throne is rot. Mortivar will carve new order." Kael advanced. "Order built on slaughter ends beneath its own blade." Varys lunged, sabers spinning. He parried, countered with brutal precision, forcing her back along the narrow platform. Selene followed, rapier tip ready should Kael falter. But he moved like a storm contained. Every feint answered, every slash redirected. Finally, he locked blades at Varys's chest. "Yield," he demanded once more. Varys bared fangs. "Never." Kael twisted, disarming her with a metal scream. He pinned her against the rail. Selene stepped forward, heart pounding, rapier poised at Varys's throat. "Tell Mortivar to abandon its war," Selene said, voice steady, "or the next envoy returns as ashes." Varys met her gaze with hatred scalding hot, but then her eyes slid to Kael, a flicker of doubt. "Why protect this mortal spy?" she sneered. Kael's answer was soft. "Because she chooses truth over fear." He released Varys in one fluid motion, only to shove her backward over the balustrade. For a heartbeat she hung in space, mouth open. Then she plummeted into the choke far below. Silence followed, broken only by distant impact. Kael turned, chest heaving, and found Selene watching him. Torches guttered, lighting his face with gold and shadow. Her pulse thundered. "The courtyard is secured," Rhys reported behind them. "No further sign of Mortivar units." Kael acknowledged with a curt nod, then extended a hand to Selene. "This night is won. Come. The elders will gather at dawn. We must show a united front." They descended to the grand hall where stained glass windows now brimmed with pale rose light. Elders filled marble tiers, their voices a low storm. When Kael entered with Selene at his side, the hall quieted into brittle expectancy. Duke Garianne spoke first. "Your Highness, Mortivar's attack is repelled, but rumors spread that you placed a human infiltrator in command." Kael's voice rang clear. Lady Selene Vale did what complacent nobles could not. Anticipated Mortivar's tactics and saved lives. Question my judgment, and you question our survival. Lady Miriel's gaze narrowed on Selene. "We will not be ruled by sentiment for warm prey." Selene stepped forward before Kael could reply. Every eye speared her, yet she lifted her chin. "I was sent here to poison Prince Kael," she said, letting the confession ripple through gasps. "But I saw a ruler who values peace. Mortivar wants chaos. Tonight, I chose to thwart them, as I will again. If that makes me pray, then judge me by my claws." Garianne's brow furrowed. Why admit such treachery? "Because lies fester," Selene answered. "Expose your infection or die from it. I choose exposure, and so should this court." Kael's hand brushed hers, a silent commendation. He addressed the elders. "I will convene a council at dusk. Representation from both vampire and human authorities will sit at the same table. Lady Vale will facilitate. Any noble opposing cooperation may leave, but know this: Mortivar hunts divided houses first." Silence lingered. Then Garianne inclined his head. Miriel followed, though her glare promised future contests. One by one, the elders bowed. When the hall emptied, fatigue sluiced through Selene, nearly buckling her knees. Kael steadied her. "I made speeches," she murmured, dazed. "I never make speeches." "You made truth," he said softly. "They will remember." He guided her to the terrace overlooking mountains where sunrise had breached jagged peaks, flooding valleys with molten gold. Bats wheeled homeward, their silhouettes like trailing ribbons. Cold wind carried distant smoke, battlefield residue, but also pine and early blossoms. Selene pressed a hand to her wound. Kael's gaze followed, brow creasing. "Let the healers tend you," he urged. after one promise. She turned to face him fully. I cannot serve two masters. My former handlers will brand me traitor. Your court will question me for years. If I stand beside you, it must be on my own terms. Name them. I speak truth always, even when it hurts you. He smiled, small, genuine. Then grant me the same freedom. They stood close enough to share breath frosting and morning chill. Light gilded Kael's hair, banishing the last impression of monster. Selene lifted a trembling hand, brushing fingertips along the scar the assassin's blade had left on his jaw earlier. He caught her wrist, turned it, pressed a kiss where her pulse fluttered. I owe you a truth, he whispered, amber eyes dark with emotion. In all my centuries, I have never feared oblivion until tonight, when I thought I might lose you before knowing who you truly are. Her heart thudded once, twice, then seemed to open like a gate flung wide. She rose on toes, closing the scant distance. Their lips met, tentative, breathless. The kiss was not victory's roar, but a vow gently spoken, sweet with possibility and sharp with everything that could shatter it. When they parted, dawn had fully claimed the sky. Selene drew a shaky breath. So, she said, voice husky, what happens now? Kael surveyed the blazing horizon. Now we begin a war of peace. Mortivar will strike again. The humans will question this alliance, and daylight will keep trying to kill me. He glanced at her, smile tilting. But for the first time, I don't face it alone. Selene looked at the mountains, their snow caps reflecting sunrise, and realized how far a single night had carried her. She laced her fingers with his. I'm with you, she said. Below, bells tolled the hour of morning prayer. Once a call to fear for mortals hiding from vampires, now an echo of a new covenant. Wind teased Selene's hair across Kael's shoulder. Together, they stood on the brink of uncertain light, two silhouettes carved against gold, enemies remade into something far more dangerous than lovers or allies alone. Hope.